What is going on, guys? My name is Sena and welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be ranking every agent in Valorant on a tier list based on how strong and useful they are. About a year and a half ago, I made an agent tier list video, but since then, so many agents have been buffed and nerfed and new ones have been added, so I thought now would be a good time to make an updated video. I'd like to preface this video with two things. Firstly, this is only taking ranked into consideration and not pro player VCT, so I won't be looking at any VCT agent pick rates or anything like that. And secondly, this list is my personal opinion, so you guys are allowed to disagree, and I'd actually encourage you to let me know who you would swap around in the comment section below. This list will be applicable to both PC and console, as I feel like the changes made to the agents on console are pretty minor and don't really shift their placement very much. Right before we jump into the video though, guys, I want to take a moment to introduce you and thank Valorant Tracker for sponsoring this video. Valorant Tracker is the most popular app for viewing and tracking your stats and improvement. You can look at all sorts of stats like KD ratios, win rates, agent win rates, map win rates, and so much more. One of the coolest features Valorant Tracker offers is the live match tab, where you could actually see the stats and ranks of every player in your game. That I also mentioned that Valorant Tracker is 100% free to download and use, and you don't have to pay a single penny to get access to all of these awesome tools. Click my link in the description or pinned comment to download Valorant Tracker today. Huge thank you to Valorant Tracker for sponsoring this video, and with all of that being said, guys, let's jump right into the video. As you guys can see here, we have our tier list ready to go, and I'm going to be going down the list of agents in alphabetical order and ranking them on this tier list from S tier all the way down to D tier. Starting off this list, we have Astra. Astra's an interesting one because she used to be so strong, but nowadays she doesn't really get picked very much. She's really good at post plant with being able to put a star on the bomb to either suck the player off the bomb or to stun them, so she's definitely good in that situation. Her global utility is really strong as well. The fact that she can smoke from across the map in an instant is really good, and she really excels in that aspect. Astra's not exactly a bad agent, but I feel like the other controllers provide much more value than she does, and I feel like having a different controller on most maps will usually be more beneficial. For example, on a Sens, I would much rather have Omen because we can blind the choke points to get in, and on Bind, I would much rather have Brim because of his Molly and Stim Beacon. For these reasons, I think I'm going to be putting Astra in C tier. She's definitely not a bad agent, but compared to the other controllers that you can choose from, she's definitely not a top pick. Next up, we have Breach. Breach is another interesting one because I feel like Breach is much more of a situational character. His utility works best when you have other agents playing off them. For example, if you stun an enemy, then you have your jet dash on them, or if you're blinding for your team on a site execute. The problem with Breach is that if he's being run as a solo initiator on a team, you now have no scanning utility or drone to clear any of sight before you guys execute. This means that most of the time you're going to be running in through the choke point blind, trying to face clear every angle to find out where the enemies are playing, rather than being able to go through with that recon utility. Pair that with the fact that there's not really a lot of maps that he gets to see the full potential of his value, which makes it really hard to place him high up on this list. I'm gonna have to put Breach in the C tier because it's really hard to use him as a solo initiator, and he doesn't really get to see the full potential of his utility on most maps, and you really need your team to capitalize off of his utility for him to get his full value. Next up on the list, we have Brimstone. Brimstone is a pretty solid controller. He has the longest lasting smokes in the game and a molly that deals a ton of damage. The downside to his smokes, though, are the fact that they do not refresh, so you only have 3 for the whole round. He's also not viable on every map, like you would hardly ever see a Brimstone on Icebox or Lotus. He's pretty strong on the maps that he's viable on, and he has a pretty good kit as well. However, with that being said, there's nothing about his kit that particularly stands out to me as being overpowered or just really good for ranked in general. This might upset some of you Brim mains out there, but I'm gonna be putting Brimstone in B tier. Fight me. Next up on the list, we have Chamber. Unfortunately for Chamber, he hasn't really seen much changes in the past year. He did get a slight buff with his ult and the price of his headhunter rounds, but other than that, he hasn't really been changed much. He is a sentinel, which means that he should be able to lock down sites, which in my opinion is really hard to do with just a single trip. I pretty much main Chamber on Lotus, but in my opinion, that's really the only map that he gets to see a lot of value on besides maybe Icebox. There's just so many other sentinels that bring so much more to the team than Chamber does, and I feel like Chamber is just a really selfish character. Because of these reasons, unfortunately, I'm gonna be putting Chamber in the D tier. I really wish I could put him higher, but just looking at all the other sentinels on this list, he brings so much less value to the team. Next up on the list, we have Clove, which is actually the newest agent in Valorant. Clove is an interesting one because I really didn't think that she was gonna be very strong when she was first released. But after playing Clove and using her a lot in ranked, I can confidently say that she is one of the best agents in Valorant. Her pick-me-up will bring you back to max HP after a kill with a speed boost, and she can place smokes after she dies and self-res for an ult. I think the main thing that sets Clove apart from all of the other controllers is how recklessly you can play. You can pretty much play like a duelist and entry for your team and still play smokes after you die, so it honestly feels like she was designed for ranked. You can easily drop high kill games with Clove, and I confidently say that she is one of the best agents in the game, period. I think most people will agree with this take, but for this list, I'm putting Clove in the S tier. She is very, very strong in ranked. Next up on the list, we have Cypher. Cypher is a really solid agent. His trips are really good, his camera gets you a lot of information, and his cages are great for one-ways or for defusing or planting the bomb. You can be really versatile with his kit, and there's so many different setups that you can do, and he can watch flank as well. I think Cypher is in a really good spot, and he serves his purpose well as a sentinel and really can lock down those sites, and I think that he's great for ranked. I'm gonna be putting Cypher in the A tier. He is definitely one of the stronger characters, and I think he's very deserving of it. Next up on the list, we have Deadlock. Deadlock is another interesting one because when she was first released, she was really bad and basically nobody ever played her. Since then, she's received a lot of buffs and she's actually not a bad agent right now. On the new map Abyss, I found that she's really strong. I love playing Deadlock on Abyss, and I think that she's a decent character. That being said, I definitely do not think that she's better than Cypher or Killjoy, and you can definitely get more value out of other sentinels than you can with Deadlock. The wall is pretty good, but I feel like the Sage wall is better, and she's a very situational character on a lot of maps. Because of these reasons, I'm gonna be putting Deadlock in the C tier. She's just too situational, and there's a lot of other agents that you can get more value than, but she's definitely not a bad agent by any means. Next up on the list, we have Fade. Fade was really strong when she was first released, but she got nerfed so much and has honestly lost her glory that she had when she first launched. She's still a really solid agent, I just don't really see her being played in ranked that much anymore. If you know Haunt lineups, you can basically get guaranteed scans, and there's a lot of stuff that you can do with her kit. Her tether is really good to combo with a raised nade, and her dogs are great for clearing out the close corners. I think they're actually supposed to be cats, but I'm just gonna call them dogs because that's what I'm used to calling them. Her ult is pretty strong too, which makes everyone deafened and 1 HP and gives you a trail on where they're all playing, so it's great for site executes. Honestly, Fade is a pretty solid agent, and I don't really have a lot of bad things to say about her, so for this list, I'm putting her in the B tier. Next up, we have Gecko. Gecko has really grown on me, and I really do think that he is one of the strongest characters. The fact that you can plant the bomb and defuse it with Wingman is so powerful and can turn an unfavorable situation into your favor. His molly complements this perfectly since you can use it for post plant, and you can also use it to flush out players playing in corners and things like that. His ultimate is so good with the fact that you can detain enemies with it and pick it up again after you use it once. His blind is really good too, since you have to shoot it and you can't dodge it, messing up the enemy's crosshair placement, and all around, Gecko has one of the best kits out of any agent. Because of all these reasons, I think that Gecko is very deserving of the S tier. I think he's viable as a solo initiator since his flash clears out so many angles and he has his wingman, and I think that he is just honestly one of the best initiators. Next up, we have Harbor. Harbor has had no changes for so long, and it's so sad to see Harbor just sitting in the dust. You can get away with playing him on some maps, like the new map Abyss he's decent on, and Pearl he's solid on, but other than that, I don't see any reason in running Harbor. His Cove is pretty decent since you can throw it on a teammate while they're planting, but other than that, I don't really see much value in his kit. I hardly see anyone ever playing Harbor, and for all these reasons, I'm unfortunately gonna have to be putting Harbor in the D tier, and I do think that he's in desperate need of some changes. Next up on the list, we have ISO. ISO recently got a buff with his shield that literally made him the most overpowered agent in Valorant, and they completely broke him. Just recently though, they nerfed him, which made him not as strong and broken, but he's definitely still very solid. His shield gives you an advantage in the first fight of any round, but they did reduce the time on it. His vulnerables are really strong and are one of the best part of his kit. His wall is decent, although I think it definitely is the weakest part of his kit, but all around he's still a really strong agent. His ultimate is not bad, but there's definitely some situations where it can grief you, for example if someone camps your body after you win the ult. All around, I think ISO is in a pretty good spot, and I'm gonna throw him in A tier. I was gonna throw him in S, but after the recent nerfs, the fact that you can't refresh your shield with 2 kills, and the fact that it doesn't last as long anymore, doesn't make him as OP as he was before. Next up on the list, we have Jett. Despite all the nerfs Jett has gotten over the years, I still think that she is one of the strongest agents. You can entry with her, you can op with her, she's such a versatile character and has so much mobility. The fact that you can just prime your dash, take a fight, and then get out instantly is so strong, and she just has so much different playstyles that you can use. Her updraft is great for taking verticality, and her smokes, although not as strong as they used to be, are still pretty good. I was really considering putting Jett in A tier, but I actually think that she's still deserving of the S tier just because of how much impact you can have with her. Next up on the list, we have KO. A lot of people make it sound like KO is one of the best agents in the game, but in my opinion, he's a lot weaker than most of the other initiators. For one, he falls in the same fate that Breach does, where it's really difficult to run him as a solo initiator because of the lack of recon utility. Sure, he has a knife, but if you're just throwing it on sight, you have no idea where that player is actually positioned. His flashes are decent, but only when you throw them with the left click because they really nerfed the right click pop flash and it's not as strong anymore. His molly is pretty weak since the radius is really small and doesn't do a lot of damage. I will admit his ultimate is pretty good and really helps with sight executes, but other than that, I really don't see KO being very useful in ranked. The suppressed debuff from his knife only lasts 8 seconds, and if your team doesn't capitalize off that, it's pretty much useless. This is probably gonna piss a lot of people off, but for this list, I'm gonna have to put KO in the D tier. Next up, we have Killjoy. Killjoy is an incredibly strong character. Her turret is great for holding flank or holding a choke point to play off contact. Not only that, but her alarm bot is great as well because it not only gives you info on where an enemy is, but also vulnerables them as well. This means that as Killjoy, you can single-handedly get info on 2 choke points simultaneously while AFKing. Not even to mention her mollies, which are great for pairing with her alarm bot since they'll shred the enemy if they're vulnerable and can be used in post plant. Her ultimate is great for retake and can be used to take sight or flush enemies out of a position. Killjoy is, in my opinion, the best sentinel and one of the best agents in Valorant. She really provides so much value to a team. For these reasons, I think Killjoy is very deserving of the S tier. Next up on the list, we have Neon. Neon recently got a huge buff, which gave her 2 slides and gave her extra accuracy while sliding. They removed her second stun, but it now pops faster and stuns for longer. The problem with Neon is her viability on maps. She's good on a map like Lotus, where there's so much open space, but on a map like Bind or Ascent, where you're constantly running through tight choke points to execute sights, one Cypher setup or one Killjoy setup, and it's going to be really hard to get value. I don't really see Neon being played and ranked on many maps besides Lotus, and I think that she is a strong agent, but a lot of people overestimated how good the buffs really are. If you're a movement god like Temet, sure you can get a lot of value out of her, but just in the average ranked game, I don't think that she's one of the better duelists on most maps. This is probably going to piss a lot of people off, but for this list, I'm going to have to put Neon in C tier. She's just not as strong as a lot of people initially thought when she was buffed. Next up on the list, we have Omen. Omen is a really solid character and one of the better controllers. His flash is really good for taking sight, his TPs are really strong for repositioning, and his smokes are pretty big and last a decent time as well. The only negative part of Omen's kit in my opinion is his ultimate, but it's not even like it's terrible because you can grab bomb with it or rotate sights with it as well. I think Omen has a really solid kit and he's really fun to play in ranked, and I think that he's in a really good spot right now. I don't really have anything negative to say about Omen, so I'm going to be throwing him in the A tier. He's very solid. Next up on the list, we have Phoenix. Phoenix is a pretty slept on agent. His flashes are really strong, and the fact that he can heal himself is pretty good as well. His ultimate only costs 6 points and gives him an extra life, which is great for entering, and all around he's a pretty solid duelist. One of his downsides is that he's not exactly the most viable on all maps. You hardly ever see Phoenix getting played on Lotus or Icebox, for example. There's just other duelists that do the job better. He's still pretty solid and a very strong agent, so for this list, I think that Phoenix is deserving of the B tier. Next up, we have Raze. Raze recently got a slight nerf to her satchels, which don't send you as far anymore. Honestly, I think the nerf was pretty minor, and I still think that she is one of the stronger duelists. Her nade is incredibly strong for clearing angles or playing post plant, and it's a really versatile piece of utility. Her boombot is great as well for clearing out angles or to follow up with for an entry. Her ult is pretty strong as well, and you can get away with playing Raze on almost every map. Like I said, I still think that she's a top tier duelist, and I really don't have much negative to say about her, so I think I'm just going to throw her in the A tier. Next up, we have Reyna. Reyna just recently got a bit of a rework, which made her heal you for 50 HP instead of 100, but it doesn't run out. In my opinion, I think that this was more of a buff than it was a nerf, because on pistol round, if you buy a ghost and you get a kill, you can instantly heal up to 150 HP and stay at that for the rest of the round, and it will never run out. They also made her ultimate not run on a timer anymore, so you can pop it at the start of the round and turn into Thanos for the entire round. Her dismiss also got buffed, where you can clear so much more distance and you move so much faster when you're in your dismiss form. Honestly, Reyna's just a pub stomping agent for ranked, and I think that she's still very strong. I think her rework buffed her more than it did nerf her, and I think that she's really strong, so I'm gonna put her in the A tier. Next up on the list, we have Sage. Sage is an interesting one because I definitely do think that she's good at area denial, but a lot of the other sentinels provide more value than she does. Her slow orbs are really good for stalling a push, and her heal is pretty good as well for your team. I think Sky Heal is a lot better, which is kind of funny considering that Sage is supposed to be a main healing agent, but her ultimate is very strong, being able to revive your teammates. She's definitely not the worst agent out there, but I definitely do think that she provides a lot less value than you can get with some other sentinels. For these reasons, I'm gonna have to be putting Sage in the C tier for this tier list. Next up on the list, we have Sky. Sky has received so many nerfs over the past year, but I definitely do think that she's still very strong. Like I just mentioned, her heal is the best heal in the game, and her flashes are great because you can not only use them to blind enemies, but they also double up as info. Her dog is great for clearing sight on an entry, and she's just an all-around really strong agent. Her ultimate is pretty solid too, and I honestly don't really have much bad to say about her. She's not as strong as she used to be, but for these reasons I listed, I think that she's very deserving of the A tier. Next up, we have Sova. Sova's pretty solid as well, but he's definitely not as good as he used to be. His dart got nerfed a while back, which only scans twice now instead of 3 times, and his drone duration got decreased. He's still a pretty solid agent though, but doesn't exactly get the most value on every map. I think Sova is a very average character, and he's definitely not bad, but he's definitely not the best either. For these reasons, I'm going to be putting Sova in B tier. I think he's just an average agent, and you can definitely get a lot of value out of his kit. Next up on the list, we have Viper. Viper just recently got a huge nerf to her utility, which makes it so that she has 1 molly instead of 2, and you can't pick up her orb after the round starts, and her wall doesn't last as long anymore. She used to be really strong, but after all these nerfs, I think that she's just average. She's definitely not bad, but she doesn't really stick out to me as such a strong character like she used to. Because of this, I'm going to be throwing her in B tier. She's definitely not bad, but definitely not as strong as she used to be. And lastly, the final agent on this list, we have Yoru. Yoru is a really solid duelist and actually provides a decent amount of value. His clone is really strong to use on an entry, especially if comboed with his flash. His TP is really versatile, as you can use it to rotate quickly on defense or TP backside on attack. You could also use it to fake TP to throw off enemies, and you can play so many mind games with Yoru. His ultimate is really strong as well, and all around, I don't have much bad to say about Yoru. He definitely does have a high learning curve though, so a new player definitely will not be able to get the best value out of him. For these reasons, I'm going to be throwing Yoru in the B tier. He's a really strong agent, but you definitely do need to take a lot of time learning him and how to use his kit to get the highest value possible. And there you guys have it. This is what we're working with for the final tier list for every Valorant agent. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is my personal opinion, and you guys can disagree and let me know what you guys think about this list down in the comment section below. While you guys are down there, let me know which agents you've been maining recently, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoy this type of content. We're getting super close to 200k, and I just cannot thank you guys enough for all the support that you guys have shown on this channel recently. You guys are the best, and I cannot thank you guys enough for all of that. I have a Discord linked down in the description below. You guys should come join that. We have a super chill community. We would love to have you. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day or night to watch this video, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.